Welcome back to the Opperman Report Aftershow. We are here tonight with Laura Johnston Kohl, the author of Jonestown Survivor and Insider's Look. You can find a link to that book on the Opperman Report, blogspot.com. And click on that link and pick up this book. This is a fascinating story. Laura, are you back?
I am.
What does it feel like retelling a story all the time?
I think that in a way, if I don't talk about it, it's like it festers. If you have, like a boil or a pimple and you don't ever, open it up, somehow it just rebuilt and I start having nightmares or dreams. I feel like I have a certain calling to keep the conversation going. And also, I think that when I talk, I kind of clear people's thoughts so that you can realize that the people who died there, it was such a loss for the people who died there. They would have made such a big difference in this world because they were willing to give the ultimate sacrifice to make the world better. And so, I feel like I try and let you know that they were just the greatest people on earth. And they had made this sacrifice to leave the creature comforts of San Francisco to be, in the jungles of Guyana because they thought that it would model for the rest of the world what it would be like to live in a racism-free society. Yeah,
it's so true. Here these are a thousand revolutionaries, activists, that are taken out of the picture,
That's right.
It's tragic when you think about it, just because they would all still be active people right now, too. I interview people our age, and older all the time that are still activists and still fighting. Which reminds me, too, Sunday night, guys, don't forget, I'm doing a special show Sunday night, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can pick us up on Spreaker and iHeart and YouTube and whatever stations want to pick us up Sunday Night Live. We'll be doing a show about those escaped convicts and about what is really going on in that prison right now. Right now in that prison, there's thousands of people in that prison right now that cannot call their families, cannot call their friends, cannot speak to their lawyers. They're all in lockdown. And the whole town, it seems to be in lockdown by militia and National Guards and all kinds of police roadblocks and all kinds of stuff over these two guys who supposedly tunneled out of this place, which I believe is so ludicrous to me. It's unbelievable. And my guest is going to be talking about she thinks that they were walked out of there, which goes on quite a bit. And we'll be talking about that kind of thing, and which I have another story I could tell you about. Well, I'll talk about it on Sunday. That's right in the middle of Jonestown, Guyana. I'm wasting time. So that way it just happened. A couple of questions for you. Now, first of all, how did Mark Lane get out of there alive?
So Mark Lane and Charles Gary were our attorneys in People's Temple. And so they made pretty frequent trips down to Jonestown. I picked them up at the airport a number of times. And so the day of the 18th, they were involved, during the presentation, the show, and everything that Ryan was enjoying and everything. And then the next day they had security guards around their cottage apparently. And Mark Lane's story is that he talked the guard into letting them go because they could tell the true story of People's Temple. The guard did not survive, and I have not found Mark Lane to be credible in a number of different things he's done and said, and because and I know a little bit more about him, and I haven't been impressed with his integrity either. So I don't really know what to believe. I do know that they were released. I tend to think that it was all a plan for them to be released because nothing in Jonestown happened spontaneously. Everything was planned. And everything always was planned. There was never a time that there was something serendipitous or by chance. Nothing was by chance. So my sense of things is that somebody told the people who were on security, if there were any people on security, that at some point they should be let loose. So I don't really know what happened to him. I do know that both Charles Gary, who I have the highest regard for, and Mark Lane, who is at the other end, that they were both able to leave.
Okay. Now, how did he get out? Because did he get on that boat?
Oh no! So he just walked to the town. At that evening, it was difficult to get police or anything into Jonestown because even people who were at the airstrip ran into the jungle to get away because they didn't know if more people would be coming or what. So that night, and the airstrip in Kaituma did not have lights, so no planes could land at night. I understand that there was a group of some kind of military people who landed at Matthews Ridge, which was about 45 miles away, which is where Leslie Wagner and her group of people who went on the picnic the morning of November 18th, that was where they were aiming to go. So the military did come in and try and get into Jonestown that night. But Ryan and Gary were just picked up, along the road or something by the military, I believe.
You meant Mark Lane and Gary.
I mean, yeah. Mark Lane. What did I say?
You said Ryan.
Oh, yes. No. Yeah, Mark Lane and Charles Gary were picked up along the road after they left Jonestown.
Okay, now back to Mark Lane. So you said you picked him up at the airport, drove him around, stuff. Did you guys ever get into talking about the Kennedy assassination, that kind of stuff?
Jim often would bring that up when he introduced Mark Lane to speak at our meetings. And even when we were in San Francisco and Mark Lane came to visit us in the temple in San Francisco, he would talk about the conspiracy to kill Kennedy and how the commission that did the research was not complete and that there was really a whole other kind of conspiracy. So we were pretty familiar with his feeling about Kennedy. By the time he came to Jonestown, we knew him well enough to know his theory.
But did you ever get into deep discussions with him about the JFK assassination?
I didn't personally. If I was driving them, then I wouldn't. But they were kind of a funny pair to pick up at the airport. It was always interesting to see how they were going to come in their little jumpsuits and toupees. It was funny. So
I love that. I'm still trying to get him on the show, so I better watch my step. Trying to get him to come on. Jumpsuits and toupees. Now, what other problems did you have with Mark Lane?
He was intimately involved with a really good friend of mine, and he didn't show himself to have any character.
Okay, very interesting.
So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, and people can look him up too. He's a very controversial figure. Got his hands on one of the witnesses at JFK, and different things went on there. Now, what about Paul Dwyer, the U.S. Embassy consulate guy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's pretty much accepted by people I know that he was a local CIA agent.
My goodness,
and
really?
I know that he was like one of the very first ones back into Jonestown after everything happened. So, I mean, I do know that we were monitored. I'm sure that all of our radio broadcasts, I'm sure that, we were monitored in a lot of ways. And for some reason, nobody ever stepped in until Congressman Ryan went. But, I mean, I think that the U.S. government was not interested in being surprised by anything that happened. So, but, like I said, I saw Jim's personal deterioration. And at the time, I wasn't really thinking about it because I had already fallen in love with the community of Jonestown. I didn't want to leave it. And so, I didn't really spend much time worrying about Jim Jones because he didn't impact my day on a daily basis. I think that there's a difference in some of the survivors. Survivors are from a lot of different parts of People's Temple. Some people are survivors because their parents took them to People's Temple. Right. Some people are survivors. Some people came from, because their husband or wife brought them in. Some people came like I did, independent of anybody and by myself. And I didn't have a family in Jonestown. I didn't have blood relatives there. And some of us came because of political background and wanting to be politically active and socialist. And so in a way, the people and some people brought their whole families in. So today, when you talk to survivors, a lot of our own personal views are the results of how we got in the temple in the first place.
Gotcha.
Like, because it was my free choice to go into People's Temple in a way, and because I, was an activist and, even revolutionary, or, it's like an extremist. When I went in, I was watching that aspect of People's Temple develop. And so when I was in Guyana, I saw this wonderful community that engaged everybody, that was exciting to be part of, that was one of a kind, that had integrated everybody. Racism was really gone in Jonestown. There was no racism. We had been retrained that however we were brought up, that, everybody on TV was white for those first 10 years. And even today, you watch TV, you could watch several hours of program before you see a diverse crowd on television today in 2015. So, I love the political effort being made in Guyana. And so that clouded my view on the more personal part of people who weren't happy to be there, who wanted to leave and all that stuff. So I was not privy to that point of view. People who were brought by their family members and who, left without family members and lost their family members, they have a whole other perspective. And I understand that. And so, but all of the perspectives are true. Mine is true for me. Another person has a completely different other point of view, but it's true for them. So, if you talk to the survivors, you'll find we have really completely different points of view on many ways of interpreting what was going on in Jonestown.
Well, back to Dwyer, though, because now there are tapes of Jim Jones at the end saying, "Get Dwyer out of here, get Dwyer out of here." Was he there that night?
Oh. Because I was in Georgetown, I don't remember, but it's very likely he came in with Ryan.
Okay. So now, Jim Jones was a bright guy. He must have known that Dwyer was CIA, but still he had a positive relationship with Dwyer?
I don't think Jim had a positive relationship with anybody unless it was in his interest.
Okay.
He didn't have a good buddy. In anybody, there was nobody that was a good buddy to Jim Jones.
Well, then, if
Jones Jim had a relationship with somebody, it was because it was in his best interest to do it. So,
but if he was about to kill himself and about to kill everybody, all of his followers, his whole army, all his people, it's all the ships going down. Why would he care that Dwyer get out of there safely? Why when he say get Dwyer first? He's CIA, kill him.
Oh, I don't know. Is that what he said on the tape?
No, he said, "Get him out of here." Where's Dwyer? Get him out of here. Get Dwyer out of here. That's practically a verbatim quote.
Oh, so it might have been that he was going to get him out before he was going to have people take the poison.
Yeah, right. But why? If he knew that Dwyer was CIA, why didn't he kill Dwyer just like he wanted to kill Leo Ryan?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't really know.
Now, what about the stories that there was all this money down there, cash, that left on boats?
Jim was a micromanager of everything. As far as I can tell, the only thing at the end that Jim did that made sense to me, of all the crazy things he did, and he did many crazy and horrific things, he tried to save money and he had, his secretaries go to different countries. We had, I forgot how many millions of dollars, like $17 million in bank accounts around the world, and money in Jonestown and money everywhere. And we lived very simply. We did not have fancy things. Even Jim Jones in the middle of Jonestown, the only thing one of his surviving secretaries said is, they had soda. Jim had soda in Jonestown. So here you have this leader who has amassed a fortune of $17 million or however many millions, who had 1,000 people follow him to the rainforest. And the only thing he does that's different than the people who lived in Jonestown was to have soda. So, he was a spendthrift, and he was not somebody who spent money. He said it all the time, I'm saving money for a rainy day. And it wasn't a rainy day yet.
Okay, where'd the money go? Where's the money?
So all the money was turned over to the conservator. Robert Fabian was put in charge of all temple finances. So he's the one who got all the money. He sold all the real estate and property, everything he could sell, and he created a fund in San Francisco, including the San Francisco Temple. And then people filed wrongful death suits, and all that money was paid out to the people who filed suit and to the debtors. I mean, I think the U.S. government charged for the bodies that were brought back and a number of different things, but all of that was distributed through the executor of the People's Temple estate.
Okay, so they were able to track down all that money, even overseas, and get it back and pay it to the victims and their ancestors.
I've heard that some of the military that went into Jonestown the next day, that some of them are richer than you would think. But, I think that most survivors feel that we really were less than, we were just outrageous to Guyana as a country, that we, brought in this crime. Guyana was a country that had crime of choke and rob. Somebody would walk up to you, put their hand to your throat and ask you for your money, and you give them the money and then they'd walk off. That was the kind of crime they had. And then we brought this absolute devastation of 918 people dying with poison to their country. And so anybody who says, oh yeah, I'm Guyanese, they're immediately, asked if they know anything about Jonestown. I mean, we've done a horrible disservice to this wonderful country. So, my point of view is if people ended up with some money or pieces of buildings or whatever they ended up with, they certainly deserve that and more.
Okay, now you're living down there still in Georgetown. What happens next? Because this horrific thing happens. There's soldiers in your house, 17-year-old soldiers. They're being nice to you. They don't even know why they're there. Okay, but all this is going on. What happens the next day, the day after? What happens?
So we were totally traumatized, and so the airlines were going to bring everybody back, all the survivors back who had any survivor who had no knowledge of what was going on in Jonestown or Sharon Amos. So there were about 50 of us they were going to bring back, but they had this rumor started about a hit squad, and they were talking about probably the basketball team because here it had several of Jim's sons on it. They were all over 6 feet tall. They were good sports, and so athletic. And so there was a rumor passing that there was a hit squad. So, Stephen had just stopped everything, any death that he could have anything to do with, he stopped it. He was certainly not going to then turn around and kill somebody. That was never his plan. He wanted to stop the deaths in Jonestown. He would argue with Jim anyway in Jonestown. So to think that he would be part of a hit squad was, absolutely ludicrous. So, but anyway, the rumor got started that there was a hit squad, even though there were, so few survivors. And so the airlines didn't want to bring people back without having enough armed guards on the plane. So we had to wait in Jonestown until they amassed this big group of people who could go on the airlines and escort us back.
Wait,
after about 10 days.
What country provided these armed guards to get on the plane with you?
From the U.S., because they were U.S. planes that came and got us and brought us back to New York.
And what branch of the military or what kind of guards were these?
I know that they were airplane guards. I've forgotten the name of them, like air marshals or something like that.
Yeah, okay.
And so, but we needed 2 per person. So
really? By
the time we left Guyana, we got on a plane with 2 air marshals per person. We were taken to New York, where we were interrogated by the FBI. And at the
wait a second, you get off the plane. They take you to FBI headquarters. They take you to a hotel. How do they interrogate you?
They took us to all these RVs on the runway at the airport.
Right.
At the airport. So they took us all to our own, RVs, and we stayed there, and then they would come in and they say, so, Laura, the guy next door said you knew everything. And right. I said, I need to talk to my lawyer, and they'd leave. And then they come back, 5 hours later and say, now they say you know everything and you knew this and that. And I said, I need to talk to a lawyer. And so I understand that William Kunstler was on hold waiting to see if anybody called for him to come in, but they weren't letting us talk to lawyers at that point.
What about Mark Lane? Where was he?
Huh?
Mark Lane, where was he? He's a lawyer. Where was he?
No comment.
He's a New York lawyer, by the way. He was a councilman or something in New York City. Okay, so Mark Lane was still walking through the jungle.
Mark Lane was AWOL,
Right.
and but William Kunstler was going to take it on as a class action. In fact, he contacted us later to say he would handle it, but really there were no charges out of that. All of us came back into New York. A lot of us were given a subpoena to appear before the grand jury in San Francisco. I was, and so I got a public defender, and I went into the grand jury and pretty much took the Fifth Amendment. But the reality is
wait, one question. Now, when you were called the subpoena for the grand jury, did you have to pay your own expenses to get over there, or did they provide that for you?
They gave me the airfare to San Francisco.
Right.
And then I had to go visit my mom because she was in Washington, D.C. So I went kind of back and forth before the grand jury had me go in.
What did your mom say what was that like?
Well, my mom, she was just so happy I was alive that I think all she did was hug me for about the first, for every minute I was with her, she just hugged me.
Sure.
So, yeah. Because, I don't know what there is to say, but I was so traumatized that really the only time I had any peace was when I was with the other survivors.
Okay.
Because there's nothing I could say to somebody who didn't have the experience I had with People's Temple. There was nothing, I wasn't talking anyway, but my own comfort level, I couldn't keep it together with somebody who hadn't experienced any of it.
Were they keeping you apart during the interrogations and stuff like that?
Say it again?
Were they keeping you guys apart from talking to each other?
Yeah, we never talked to each other for about 18 hours. Then they took us to a hotel, and we spent the night, and then we flew out to San Francisco. And that's, I believe maybe when we left New York, we were given the subpoenas. But the reality is that the people who survived were not people who knew anything about the details of Jonestown and what was going on. There was nobody left alive who had the information. Sharon Amos had the information in Georgetown, but she didn't survive. And so pretty much, there was nobody to charge. The only person they charged was Larry Layton because he was at the airstrip with a gun, but he didn't shoot Ryan. But he was charged with conspiracy. So he served 2 years in Guyana, and then he came back here to the United States and served, another 16 years or something here. And then he was released. But the people who were involved in any of the conspiracy and stuff, there was nobody else who knew that Jim was planning to kill Ryan.
But now Mark Lane and Paul Dwyer, were they subpoenaed to go to San Francisco and testify over there?
I don't really know. I would assume so, but I don't really know.
Okay. Now, weren't there... go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So just nothing came out of the grand jury there. Some people talked, but we didn't know anything. I could have talked. There was nothing I knew that would shed any light on any of it. Like there had been cyanide in Jonestown for a year. I didn't know that. I didn't even know Ryan was coming until he stopped at the house in Georgetown on his way to Guyana, to Jonestown, and he climbed over the back fence and walked around and shook hands and said, "Hi, I'm Congressman Ryan. I'm on my way out to Jonestown. I just stopped to say hi. How are things?" And we said, everything's dandy. And then Sharon Amos kicked him out and said, you weren't invited to this house, so bye. So
now really, weren't there other murders though in San Francisco after this? People that were connected to the People's Temple.
There are always murders in San Francisco, but I don't know of any murders that were connected to People's Temple. There are a couple of questions, like the Myrtles, who started Concerned Relatives, but they also were doing deprogramming for a number of other people who were in cults, right. And they were considered kind of the people who knew most about deprogramming because they had been in the temple themselves and had left. So their family was murdered. The Deanna and Myrtle, who went by Al and Jeannie Mills, and one of their daughters they were murdered in their homes. But, the police looked really carefully. They would really like to blame it on somebody in the temple. But by then, there was no temple. There was no People's Temple left. And nobody, nobody could blame anybody but Jim. Deanna and Myrtle had nothing to do with what happened in Jonestown. So, they were killed and they could never prove. It's an unsolved mystery to this day.
Okay, so they were murdered.
They were murdered.
Yeah, they were, okay. And, okay. Now, oh boy. So now, you left there. Then you got involved with Synanon?
Yeah.
I hate to ask it that way, but, it just go ahead. Tell us about what happened there. Out of the frying pan into the fire?
I came back to San Francisco, and I spent about a year, and I was just barely surviving. I mean, my whole will to live and my political, my heart was just broken, shattered. And so...
How were you supporting yourself?
So I went to work. I got a good job. They paid for me to go to school. So I worked Monday through Friday. I went to school Monday through Thursday. And then on the weekends, they were just horrible because I had no friends around that, I was living in a commune with 9 other survivors.
Oh, really?
So, I'd go to work. I'd have kind of a good day. I'd come home. Everybody would be like death, Black Death.
And so then
I'd sink into that. Or, I'd go to work, have a horrible day, like Mike Prokes would kill himself in front of all the media or something, and I'd come home absolutely devastated. I'd bring them down. We had no surplus to get over it. We just kind of reinfected ourselves with this tragedy. We could not move ahead.
Okay,
so,
wait a second. Where did you go to work?
I went into Kelly Services, and I said I'd been traveling for 2 years. That's why I didn't have a recent resume.
Okay.
But, I had all this work at the welfare department and different things. So I got hired as a secretary in an MIS department, like a computer operations where I've always been a fast typist and I'm bilingual. So I just got a job, and they kept me for a year and put me through school.
But you went back to you started a commune with former survivors as well.
Right. We lived in the temple in San Francisco for the first 3 months, and then the executor put us out on the street. He said, okay, I have to sell this building, so you have to move, and, March 1st you have to get out. So we all moved together in several different communes in San Francisco.
Did anybody try and say, hey, let's try and put it back together? Let's try and,
Absolutely not.
Okay, no one even said, let's try to start another church or anything like that?
No.
What about your faith then? You had faith when you were Christian faith. What happened to all of that?
Well, I didn't have Christian faith, but I was an atheist before, but by the time I came back from November 18th, I was far away from being any Christian.
Really? So you totally abandoned Christianity just because of one nut?
Well, I told you before, I went in as an activist and political being. I was always an atheist. From 9th grade, I was an atheist. I was in an airplane in 9th grade, and it dropped, 20 feet in an air pocket. And I started to pray, and I said, so what, somebody's going to pay attention to a plane dropping 20 minutes? No, probably not. So I had not been a person of faith really ever.
Okay.
So, and then when everything happened in Jonestown, I said, and somebody expects me to believe that there's any justice in this world? No way. Not when all my best friends died. No way.
Okay. So then you're living with this commune with survivors as well, and then somehow you wind up over at Synanon.
Right. So then I had my weekends free. I'm not a person who likes malls. I'm not somebody who likes mindless TV. So I didn't know what to do on the weekends. And every weekend I hit like a slump. Like I didn't know from Thursday night or Friday at work, 5 o'clock, I didn't know what to do until Monday morning. In People's Temple, we were frantically active every second. We never had time to kick back. Never. So when I got here, one of the hardest things was filling my time. So I started, some friends of mine had gotten some things from Synanon to take to Guyana. Like, Synanon was a residential drug treatment program in all parts of California and Chicago and Washington, all over. And so they were a nonprofit organization that helped drug addicts, and they got lots of donations of clothing and things. And so their overflow they would give to People's Temple, because we were also nonprofit. So a lot of the clothing, or some of the clothing, ended up in Guyana, but two members of the temple who were still in San Francisco were the liaison between Synanon and sending things to Guyana. So they took me to Synanon a couple of different times, and I really liked the people. They were communal, so we had something in common. They knew about People's Temple, so I didn't have to reintroduce myself every minute. And it was kind of a safety zone for me. And they had so much going on 24 hours a day, because all these, people would be kicking from drugs, and so they'd try and keep them busy with things going on, movies and cleanup and breakfast and all this. Anyway, it was a place where I could go and actually have somebody just kind of take care of me who had a little excess, and they wouldn't get as depressed as I was or bring down my mood. Anyway, it was a really nurturing environment to take care of me. And I started playing the Synanon game, which is group therapy, and it was mostly used for drug addicts who were supposed to get off of drugs. So they would game about, how it felt to be in prison for 14 years. And then people would yell at them, say, okay, get over it. That's the past. Figure out your life now. And so in the middle of those games, I was able to talk out some of my worst fears and kind of cry out my tragedy. And I don't know, I just made these really good friends who were part of Synanon. So after about a year, I moved into Synanon, and I lived there 10 years. I met my husband, and we've been married 33 years next month. My son was born there, and they just kind of wrapped me in like gauze to protect me from myself. And I had a really good 10 years there. Part of the reason I could move into Synanon, because they had a very strong leader too, Chuck Dieterich. And he had fallen off the wagon. He was a former alcoholic, and he had been to AA before he started Synanon. And he fell off the wagon when his wife died of cancer. And so he was not the saint that everybody looked up to. And I could go with a fallen angel. I could move into a community that was, taking care of itself, had people of integrity and character who were helping dope fiends and all that, and someplace that really didn't have a charismatic, strong leader that I was going to run away from. So it was a perfect time for me to move into Synanon, because Chuck Dieterich had kind of fallen off that pedestal.
But the thing is, a lot of people would describe Synanon as a cult as well.
Yeah, and some of my survivor friends tell me that they yelled and screamed at me when I said I was going to move in there, and said, "Don't go! It's a cult. It's another one. The same thing will happen." All that, but I never was good at taking advice.
Okay, me neither. Okay. Oh my. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But you were there for 10 years.
That's right, and it really. Kind of gave me back my quality of life. I developed, really intimate friendships with people who covered my back, who taught me things. I mean, really, they really gave me another reason to live, because it was just wonderful.
So then what happened when you left there? That was like the first time in years and years and years that you were outside of that kind of communal type living and stuff like that. What happened after that? Yeah.
Well, Synanon closed down in 1990. The IRS said it was no longer nonprofit, which, was pretty much true, because we had kind of stopped taking in dope fiends, and we were making a lot of money in advertising. So anyway, so they closed down Synanon, and I was ready at that point, because really my whole life I had been in either at school or in communes, and there were a lot of things I'd never done. I'd never bought a house, never gotten my own car insurance,
wow,
never
that's right.
got health insurance. I mean, I'd had a bank account in Synanon. I mean, I'd had a bank account, but I never had to pay bills because I lived in this commune. So there were a lot of things I hadn't done. So when that closed in 1990, I said, okay, I better get my butt in gear. So I went back. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology and philosophy. I started my teaching credential. So I got my bilingual teaching credential in 97.
Wait a second.
I started teaching.
How old were you then?
I survived. I was living in Jonestown in Guyana as a survivor at 31.
Okay.
So I lived in Synanon until I was 40.
Okay.
So, I was leading life, but I just added to what I had, and I, worked really hard, several jobs all the time. My son was born in 1989. And so I just went to work. And so I had a good job. I became a Quaker in 1994. I started teaching the same year my son went to kindergarten. So I've taught, ever since, and I've taught everything from, bilingual kindergarten to ESL for adults. And I've taught American Red Cross for people in factories in Spanish of how to do CPR. That was the most challenging. And so I've done all kinds of teaching in many different settings. And, at the 20th anniversary in 1998, I said, okay, so I have a family, I have a good job, I'm a Quaker, I'm settled into a decent lifestyle. I have to go back and figure out what the hell happened to my watch. What happened? What was I thinking in People's Temple to allow this to happen to me and to my friends? And so starting at the 20th anniversary, I started, reconnecting with the other survivors, trying to figure out what happened, kind of walking through the whole time in People's Temple and figuring out, what went wrong, who knew what, everything. And really that goes on to this day. It's been 36 and a half years to this day. I wrote my book in 2010 because I was ready to put down the facts as I knew them. Even now, my opinion evolves every year. Now I'm doing oral history of the survivors. I've done 10 already. As I told you earlier, when I was doing the oral histories, I thought to myself, I never did go back to Jonestown. I left from Georgetown, and I would like one final trip to Jonestown. And I could put it together for myself. And I said, I wonder if there's anybody else who feels that way. So I'm in email contact with about 65 survivors and family members. I just sent it out one day. I said, I would really like to go back to Jonestown one day. And it should be soon because I'm already 67. So soon. But I would like to go back. Is anybody interested in going? And within 24 hours, 22 survivors said they wanted to go.
Yeah, just to go down that river, like you said, like that boat trip you would take all the time, just to do that would be just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Now, what about the other survivors, though? Have they turned out to be hardworking people who went back to college and did all this like you did?
Yeah, I think that most everybody, it's kind of a glitzy word, but I said, for a while I was a survivor and now I'm a thriver, and I'm not sure when the difference happened, but I have a really good life now. I have a wonderful life in just so many ways, and good health, which makes all the difference. So I think all the survivors got to work. A couple people who were dope fiends before they came into the temple and who really were at the best they've ever been in their lives while they were in Guyana. When they came back with all the tragedy that happens, they were in and out of drug rehab for, one is still there and one now has passed away. So, I think, but the majority of people who were in People's Temple, we learned to work our butts off.
Right.
There was no vacation in People's Temple. So we learned a really good work ethic. I learned so much of how to, I was held accountable for everything I did. So if I didn't do it well, it would come back and bite me in the butt. So I learned really good work standards and work ethic and getting things done. And, at this point, I feel like I can move a mountain if I'm not distracted. And
for 67 years old, you sound 37, and so much energy, so full of energy. And I'm getting a question from the chat room about George Philip Blakely.
Oh, yeah. So Phil Blakely was British, and he was married to one of our members. After everything was over, I think he was on the boat. I don't think he was I can't remember how he survived, but there were several boats. Several of our boats were sent out as a decoy. On the morning of the 18th, Jim sent several of the boats out for whatever reason, and so those people survived. And I think Phil was on the boat and survived, but I'm not sure. But anyway, so he went back to England, and he's in touch with one of the survivors who lives in Ireland sometimes, but he just went back to farming in England.
Well, isn't the people on that boat the ones that left with all the cash?
The people who left with the cash were the three guys that Jim Jones sent out on that day with 3 suitcases of money. They didn't make it to the boat. They just made it into the rainforest after a heavy rain and dropped the suitcases and kept walking. So they had to tell the Guyanese defense where the suitcases were. So there was not money on boats. It was money that 3 people were carrying out in heavy suitcases of American dollar bills, filled with dollar bills. So they couldn't make much progress getting out of Jonestown with that.
Gotcha. Now I'm getting a note here that Philip Blakey was a CIA operative, and that even that Mae Brussels said he was CIA. Then he put up the money to buy the property down there. Anything about that?
No, that's a lie. That's a lie. He wouldn't know. He was 19.
Okay.
Or 20. I mean, he was like my same age, so he was a very young guy. So. And that none of that is true. And I mean, today he's not rich. He's farming his land. So, that's all bogus. Everybody tried to figure out who could be the CIA operative, because many people thought there was one in in Jonestown. But Philip, it wouldn't have been Philip.
Okay.
And so.
Now, what about World Vision, the group World Vision? Did they have a connection to Jonestown as well?
I don't. I know that I've heard lately that there was another group of religious people in Jonestown at the same time who had a community. And I don't know if that's the same one, but World Vision wasn't involved with us in Jonestown.
Not at all.
Not that I know of. Now, Jim and this circle of mistresses and secretaries, they had a lot of information that the rest of us didn't have about every possible thing. So if they knew of a connection, I wouldn't say no to anything just because I didn't know about it, because I wasn't in the know. But Jim and his secretaries had all that kind of information. So it wasn't something that the people in Jonestown knew generally.
Yep. The mistresses and secretaries, did any of them survive?
Yeah, so like Debbie Layton was, on the inner circle because she was in charge of the money so much of the time. So, and she survived and wrote her book, Seductive Poison. So she left Jonestown in May of 1978, and she was one of the prime vocal people trying to tell that Congress that they needed to go down and check out Jonestown. So she survived.
Now, in his inner circle, were there any men?
There were men like Mike Prokes, who was he was formerly a newspaper reporter, and he joined People's Temple. But he was the one when he called a press conference the 3 or 4 months after Jonestown happened, and he was concerned that all the bodies were just left at Dover, Delaware, and they hadn't placed them, and they didn't send them to relatives. They were just sitting there, and so he called a press conference to bring attention to that, and then he went into a bathroom and killed himself.
Get out of here. The same day?
Huh?
The same day?
The same day he called the press conference. So because the bodies had been in Dover, and so all these relatives from all over the country were saying, I want my loved one to be buried so I could have a ceremony, have some closure. What's going on? And the government was not moving on what to do. Finally, Evergreen Cemetery in Oakland stepped up and says, since so many of the people are from the Bay Area, we'll take all of them here. And so all the bodies that were in Dover that were not claimed by relatives. People didn't have a lot of money, and it was expensive moving a body across, from Dover, and the red tape and everything. So something like 500 bodies are buried in Evergreen Cemetery in Oakland, and we go there on the 18th every November to have our ceremony around them.
Now, speaking of the bodies, because the body count, the whole issue of the body count at the end there, because first they said it was like 300, then they said it was 700. What was going on with that? What do you think?
It's just so hard to tell, because they said, bodies were piled on top of bodies, and I can't really figure it out. I do know that in Georgetown, first we got a report that said, okay, there were 300 people. So all of us in Georgetown sat down to try and figure out who could have run into the woods and would be saved.
Right.
Then they said, 500 bodies. And we said, well, okay, so maybe these people didn't make it. So we tried to make sense of the statistics as we got it, but I have never heard a good explanation about why there was that, why it changed so drastically every couple of hours. I don't really know, and I haven't seen pictures that show people on top of each other, so I don't really know what happened with those numbers.
Now, do we know how many were killed by gunshot?
We don't really know, because even with the people who died, nobody came in for at least 48 hours. That nobody who had the wherewithal and the supplies to check the bodies came in for 48 hours after, being in the tropics, laying out in the sun in the tropics. So there's nothing definitive. What seems to have happened is we know Jim Jones and his nurse Annie Moore were both killed by gunfire. And we know that there was probably other gunfire, but there was some gunfire. Somebody reported hearing gunfire towards the end of the poison, but that seemed to be the animals that were killed. So I don't know. My own sense of things is that Jim had so much emotional and psychological control over the people in Jonestown. I do know that people weren't running into the woods and getting shot. That was not happening. I do know that.
How do you know?
Well, because first of all, there were not people close to the woods. There weren't woods anywhere nearby. The people who walked to the woods, like one of the seniors from Jonestown who survived, he walked up to the security guard and said, I don't want to die today. And the security guard let him go, Grover Washington. And so, the people who had guns, even if the guns were functioning, they were not, it doesn't make sense because it wasn't required. Jim had the mind control of the people who were there.
What kind of guns did the security guards have?
It turned out that a couple years before, Jim had done one of those things that if you turn in your guns to be melted down, you'll get, a free dinner at the local restaurant or something like that. So there were like 17 or 20 miscellaneous guns in Jonestown that were never melted down, and they were sent to Jonestown, I think, at the bottom of the boxes that we had shipped down. And so it wasn't, they weren't submachine guns or machine guns. They were like rifles or things like that. They were just miscellaneous turned in. There wasn't a huge arms. Jonestown was so remote, there wasn't any place to go. Like, if somebody wanted to run off into the woods, then, the woods themselves have their own predators that would probably stop you. It wasn't that we were an armed camp because Jim had all the control. It's like the guns were like superfluous. He didn't need the guns. He already had us. He had people that he had done favors for in the United States. He got somebody's son out of prison. He got somebody's daughter, away from an abusive situation. He fed the grandmother. He gave the kid, a place to stay in the valley where he could go to school. So he had done favors for everybody in Jonestown. Had been touched by something Jim had done to help their families. So when Jim said something, he had built up this trust. People said, Jim would never hurt us. If he said this is essential or this is true or this is going on, that's true because he's proven himself to us by helping us in so many ways. So he had people, people felt that he would never do something like that. And then at the end, it was too late. He told people that they were going to commit revolutionary suicide. He coerced them. He had them exhausted after all the events. And he kept talking. And then while he was talking, his same mistresses and secretaries brought out the poison, gave the poison to the kids. So that really the adults in the crowd, there was no way to run away knowing that your child had just died. I mean, he set it up so that running into the woods was not something that people would even think of. It was just too... they had lost too much already. So
okay, one question is now there was a psychiatric facility, I believe in Ukiah, that Jim Jones. Everyone that worked there got their job through Jim Jones. Are you familiar with that story?
Yeah, we're talking. It was now it's a Buddhist temple.
Okay,
it was the. What's it called? It was a state mental hospital. Yeah.
Now, did a lot of those patients wind up down there in Guyana?
So it was Talmadge Mental Hospital. And what was your question?
Did a lot of those patients wind up down there in Guyana?
No.
Is it true that O.J. Simpson's mother worked there as a nurse?
I don't know.
Okay, well, that's something to look into. Okay. I get a lot of weird information. Listen, and it sticks in my head, and I remember every little detail that I hear. But
even relevant.
What's that?
How is that even relevant?
Oh, it goes into a lot of different things.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah, because anyway, okay. So we're down to the last 8 minutes of the show, and I can't thank you enough. Okay, this is really, really a lot of great detailed information that we haven't had before on this topic. What do you want to leave us with in this last 8 minutes that I haven't asked you?
Okay. Well, I think that the person who I am today, my writing my book in 2010 was really an important part of what I had to do because up until then, I felt like there was so much I wanted to say about People's Temple, so much so that, people would fall asleep listening. I was just so driven to make sure every detail is covered. And so what I did in my book is I put down all the detail. And so other than this conversation that's been 3 hours, but in a normal setting, I could talk to people, and if they're interested, then they can always read the book for the details because I have a lot more details in the book. But what it's done in a way is when I used to go to People's Temple, I could walk in the door and feel that all my energy was purely devoted to making the world better, having a model community, treating people with dignity and integrity. I felt that my life was like really not like there was no fluff in my life, that I was really determined to do a good job, and that almost all my effort went into that. And so when I came back from Guyana, I searched for that a long time. I mean, I've been looking for an interracial group where people can be intimate and have the same feelings and, focus on the issues and the morality of our community and the humanity of the world. Like, I've been looking for that all over, and it's turned out that I have to get it from a lot of different places. There isn't one place that offers up that same kind of altruism on a daily basis that I like, and living in community. So,
do you live in a Quaker settlement now?
Huh?
Do you live in a Quaker settlement?
I don't, but because that's part of the problem. Like, I do want to live in the community at some point, but I have really strict guidelines of what I want to live in. Like, nobody can be in charge of me. I'm in charge of me, and period. Like, no discussion. So, in a way, I want to live communally, but I have really strict guidelines now of what I'm not going to do. And most of it is what I'm not, what I did already, that's not what I'm going to do.
Gotcha.
But I'm on the board of directors of the Communal Studies Association, which does research in all kinds of new religions and historic community, like Oneida and Amana and the Mennonites and people like that. So I study it from an academic point of view and do presentations there. But also I'm a Quaker, and I'm also an activist. I was part of the Occupy movement. Now I'm very involved with the ACLU and the immigration struggle. I worked with the Innocence Project and the Southern Poverty Leadership Conference. And I mean, I'm involved. I'm an activist. And then teaching, is what you do as an activist too. Like try and teach children that, bullying is not going to ever work, and that you have to be a critical thinker and things like that. So I've become the person I am today, but it's taken all these, it's almost like a collage of all these different groups to put together again the way that I can feel good every day that I'm making a difference.
And interesting, you kind of wound up in the same place where you started, with the Black Panther breakfast program.
That's right.
Yeah, which people should really take a look into, and rather than the whole thing about the Black Panther Party for self-defense running around with guns, the whole 10-point program was way more education and food. That was the first preschool, program was from the Black Panther Party.
I mean, I loved it. I loved being part of the Black Panthers because, they were talking about things as they were and trying to take back their community. I loved being, participating with them with the Panther breakfast. I thought it was just awesome that here these guys are in there feeding their kids, and the kids saw them as role models. I mean, in just so many ways, I loved what they were doing.
Well, what made you depart from them?
Well, I lived with, I had a boyfriend who was a Panther, and so he brought his 3 friends. So 4 of us were living in my apartment. And then, a lot of people passed through during the time, and so meetings were there. And so, my boyfriend was fine, but by the time he had his other friends there and, they needed a car and I was out of town, and so they worked out that little detail. And I don't know, there were just different things that came up that it didn't work having that whole group living in my house and having the meetings and everything. Yeah, it just didn't work for me. And
I got you. Listen, the smelly socks, you know what I mean? You got 4 guys living in your house, there's a lot of problems. Okay, it goes without saying, yeah. Now, what do you got coming up? Any events or anything you want to promote, or?
So a couple of things. Like, I was just in the Bay Area Book Festival last weekend. It was absolutely astounding. I mean, it was wonderful. I met people who knew the other survivors. I met somebody who knew the Ryan family, who bought my book to share with them. I met somebody from Ron Dellum's office who said that he was the person that Ron Dellum's was going to go down with Congressman Ryan on the 18th, and he had to cancel the day before, which was the first time I ever heard that. I don't really know if that's true, because I think that I would have heard it somewhere before 36 years, but anyway, so I don't know. But I met all these people who had connections with People's Temple and different ones, and it was just really kind of a cathartic weekend, And so I love that. I continue to do interviews. I'm going to be in Kentucky in September at the colonies, the Amana colonies, doing a presentation on People's Temple. And I travel around. We're going back to Guyana. This group is going to go back to Guyana in October, it looks like. So I'm kind of ramrodding that and collecting information. We have a lot of documentarians who would like to go and film us, but we're a pretty fragile group, and this is going to be an emotional trip. So we have we're probably going to try and fund it ourselves. And
we're down to 10 seconds. Laura Johnston Kohl, the author of Jonestown Survivor and Insider's Look. Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you so much. This was great information tonight, and God bless you.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay. That was Laura Johnston Kohl, Jonestown Survivor and Insider's Look. What I'm going to do is, believe it or not, okay, I'm going to take a little break here. I'll play a little commercial break. If you want to call in real quick, just say hi to me, whatever, 702-605-4894. But I'll play a little commercial break, and then pretty much what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what's coming up, my upcoming guests and stuff like that. So nothing too important, nothing too interesting. If you want to hang up for a couple of minutes. Vic's at a party tonight, so she won't be calling in. If you want to call in, don't talk about anything, promote something, plug something, just give me a call. I'll play these little ads here, and we'll be right back after this. And now a word from our sponsors. We are listener-sponsored, and we appreciate your donations. If you like the show, please visit OppermanReport.com and click on the donate button. Or you can donate directly through PayPal at OppermanReport@gmail.com. We have Mike Ray of InfinityHomePlans.com. He's the host of Parlay over at CJ Mars Radio, Thursday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you need custom home designs, stock plans, or 3D work, he's your one-stop shop for home design and graphic needs. Mike Ray at InfinityHomePlans.com. At InfinityHomePlans.com. If you're looking for essential oils, stop by and check out Essentially Tammy on Facebook. She is Young Living Essential Oils Independent Distributor. And these are 100% therapeutic-grade oils. They help support the body's natural functions. Visit the website posted on Essentially Tammy to see the current deals, or email at jocotami, JOCATAMI.com, or call 352-239-8546. 352-239-8546. Hey, if you need a private investigator, go to my website, emailreviewer.com. We offer asset searches, locates, skip tracing, adoption investigations, online infidelity investigations. We can recover deleted text messages from a cell phone or trace an email to online dating websites to catch people cheating. That's emailrevealer.com, or you can call 800-572-9762. 800-572-9762 or emailrevealer.com, my PI website. Pacific West Bamboo. It's your premier source for construction and craft-grade bamboo poles. They're announcing their latest project with EcoHead Event Sanitation, making bamboo composting bathrooms and porta-potties. Their first display will be at the Lucidity Festival in Synanon, California, April 11th to the 13th. Come by and say hi and see what you can build with bamboo. Contact them for any kind of event planning, display building. If you need construction grade or craft grade bamboo products, call Amanda at 503-839-8126, 503-839-8126. Or visit PacificWestBamboo.com, their branding website. We're also sponsored by the New World Mexican Women. This is a rural Mexican craft women's cooperative. They are traditional makers of fine handcrafted, authentic jewelry. They use beautiful stone mosaics, Pacific blue Abilene inlay. They have a wonderful book of love letters written to their men in the United States, begging them to return to their families in Mexico. But they've written a new book, and it's about a young girl that falls in love with a rodeo bullfighter and runs off with him without telling her family. It's a beautiful love story called Azuquina Part 1, Azuquina for the Rodeo. You can find their books and jewelry by clicking on their banner ad at OppermanReport.com or by Googling New World Mexican Women. You can also promote your business or website right here and have your ad played all over the world 7 days a week by emailing OppermanReport@gmail.com or calling 800-572-9762. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report After Show, brought to you by Audible.com. Go to audibletrialfrontslash.com, Opperman Report, and get yourself a free audiobook. And our guest tonight, what's her name here? Laura Johnston Kohl, Jonestown survivor and insider's look. That book is available. You can get it for free tonight if you want it. All you got to do is sign up for free there on Audible.com. Get a free audiobook on Laura Johnston Kohl, Jonestown survivor, and insider's look. You can also pick it up there from Amazon if you click on the link at OppermanReport.com. Jessica Smith wants to call in and make a prank phone call. Give us a. Can I call? She wants to call in and complain about the NAACP leader that claims that she's black, but her parents say she's white. Call in, Jessica. 702-605-4894. Let's hear a nice little rant about that. Oh boy, you gotta love it, right? Couple of things coming up. I thought our guest tonight was great, and I listened to a lot of her interviews, and like I said, a lot of people didn't let her talk. A lot of information that we've never heard before, a lot of clarifications that we've never heard before. She had the ring of truth on a lot of things, and I think she's open to hearing new ideas and more information. So we got this on the record. We got our David Kahn show that we did about 4 hours with him. We got that on the record. Let's see, this is probably Jessica calling in. 509, is that you, Jessica?
Hello, Ed.
Hey, how are you? Okay.
I'm doing good.
Listen,
have you heard the news out of Spokane about the NAACP? She's just the head here locally,
right,
of the chapter here. Well, she's lied about her race all these years.
Okay.
She's not disputing that. But the most disgusting thing about this whole thing, if you ask me, is all of these supposed hate incidents that she has reported about herself. And it goes back to when she lived in North Idaho, just right over the border from Spokane. There's a little town, North Idaho, and we had a lot of really nasty history up there. Lots of white supremacists, the KKKs. We have, everyone knows the
That's
old North Idaho.
Yeah.
Okay, we rooted that out. We got rid of that. That was history. She moved in, and she started making these claims that people were leaving nooses on her house. There may be some other things that she said happened while she was working there at the North Idaho College that, oopsie daisy, the camera was turned off that night that a swastika was put near her. It's all so suspicious. So we go back to the fact that she's lived in this fantasy for the last, I don't even know how many years. I don't know how long her parents say that she's been. I think it's 2004 when she started to really try to actually transform herself. And so we have to think back about all of these problems.
Well, let me ask you a couple of questions. Wait a minute. When did she start claiming this? Because she doesn't look black even a little bit.
Well, I know she doesn't, and
right.
I've said it for years because she's been a very open mouthpiece for years around here.
So now she said that she's black, but how did she say this? Like her grandfather's black or her father's black? What did she say?
She's not denying that she's white.
No, but back before originally a white person walks into a room and says, "No, I'm black."
Originally, what it was is that she's an artist, and she's a really, really good artist.
Okay.
And not only that, but she's a sociopath, you can tell, and she played this role. So she did small things, kink her hair.
Oh, really?
And put a little tan on her face maybe, or sometimes not have the tan on her face. And the thing is, nobody asked.
Really? Because she is blonde. Isn't she blonde?
Yes, nobody bothered to ask. And it's because everybody's so afraid of being called a racist, you can't even talk about it. It's become so absurd, you can't even ask basic questions like, are you black?
Oh, so can I measure your nose? Can I measure your nose and see if
Well, now listen, she did put on the NAACP's Facebook page and her personal page on Facebook this man and said, "This is my dad." It was a black man, a picture of a black man. And said, "This is my dad," and said, "Hopefully he'll be able to make it for a meeting in July or something." Well, it's not her dad. He was a volunteer who lived in North Idaho at the time that she just scooped up and took a picture of.
Really?
Yeah. And so that's a little bit of the background, but right now her comment that really rubbed me wrong was, I owe an explanation to the black community, and I owe an explanation to my executive board, but frankly, I don't care what the community thinks. I don't owe them anything. So basically, she just said, I owe an explanation to the black people, I owe it to my board of directors or whatever, but to the rest of the community, people who are saying, whoa, wait a minute, She owes him nothing. The flippancy, she started a lot of trouble. Okay, now did you hear, Ed, that supposedly she received all this hate mail? Did you hear anything about that?
No.
Okay. She received all this hate mail at a P.O. box that she's the only one that had a key. And so then she called the police. Well, it never went through the mail system. There's no tracking numbers. There's no stamp canceling out the postage stamp. It never went through mail, period.
Yeah, I did hear that story. Yes, it was never mailed.
The only way that it got in that box is by the person who had the key.
Right.
She's making up these stories. She's been making up these stories for years.
How did she become the head of the?
Call her on it.
How did she become the head of the NAACP if she can't even figure out to mail the letter? She could have mailed that letter to herself. Because
that's how absurd things are at this point, Ed. Because you can't even ask a common sense question, things that you see with your own eyes without being labeled something dirty, without being called a bad name of racist or anti-whatever, anti-this or that or this or that. That's why.
The NAACP now, they're defending her. They're saying that, well, we're a civil rights group. Doesn't matter if she's black or white.
Yep, they sure are. And it just makes it all a joke. It's just so sad. And we have problems. And for her to come in to be such a fraud and cause division in our area when we have tried really hard to root out some really ugly stuff, and we did it. We kicked all those white supremacists out of this area. We were making huge strides in that area. We have a nice area, Ed, of some people who are good at heart, And she came in and she stirred the pot. And I think that she's been lying from the very beginning. The very first supposed hate crime of this noose that was left at her house, it never happened. And I knew it from the time I set eyes on her. I'm like, something is not right with her. She's not telling the truth. She's so wrapped up in this fantasy that we're all just expected to partake at this point. The NAACP has now legitimized her, and so now we're all expected to live in Rachel's fantasy.
Well, you know what?
Sickening.
I think it's a good thing to point out that the NAACP also abandoned our Reverend Pinckney. And when he needed their help...
Oh, did they?
Oh, you didn't know that?
I didn't know they abandoned him. He's in just to sit there and rot in jail?
Before that, they were given... when this whole thing first started there in Michigan, they were given membership to the country club that he's always protesting against. And they were always, all the members were given memberships to this country club there.
Right. Right. Yes.
It's
I remember you talking about that. Yeah.
It's in the interview. Yeah. And they were told you have to abandon Pinckney, and they did. And now forget it. He has no. They won't even lift a finger for him up there at all, or even acknowledge his existence. Reverend Pinckney right now is doing 7 years in prison up there in Benton Harbor, Michigan. And his website is banco.org, bhbanco.org. And just Google Reverend Pinckney, and if you can give him a little help there. Hey, by the way, I want to give a shout-out to Dave McGowan. Is going to be coming on our show in 2 weeks. And he's going to be giving us an update on his health. And we're going to try and really get into some stuff with Dave about what's going on in his life, what he feels important, what he wants to leave us with, his legacy. What he wants to tell us. God forbid anything happens to him. But his website as well is called Center for an Informed America. And just Google Dave McGowan, Center for an Informed America. And there's a PayPal link at the top of there. Now, you got to understand, Dave is stage 5 or stage 4 cancer. He's going through chemotherapy. He would have been on next week, but he has chemotherapy the day before, so he's going to give it a whole week and then come on the show. But he needs our support because... while he's there, going through this treatment, he cannot work. He can't work at all. He can barely sit up and eat. He's a working man. This guy doesn't have savings. He doesn't have, there's no support but his family. And his family can't work while they're taking care of him. So it's a devastating situation, and it's the kind of thing where we all have to band together and really help out our brothers and our friends so we're all in this struggle together. So keep in mind, Reverend Pinckney in prison for 7 years. He's 67 years old. And then Dave McGowan, who's my age, a couple of years older than me, that has stage 4 or stage 5 cancer. So that's what's going on with that. Next week we have coming on, you know what? I think we need a guest for next week. We don't have a guest. But I'm talking to St. Vincent Hunt, who's the son of E. Howard Hunt. And he says he's willing to come on. So I'm trying to get him to come on next week. But he's going to be coming on in the future or in the member section. In the member section as well, we have a show coming up, Paul is Dead. We're doing another one of those shows. Doing a show Sunday night with a family member of someone who's in prison, where those, I think it's Elmira prison in upstate New York, where these 2 escaped convicts supposedly tunneled out of there and had saws, electric saws, to cut through pipes. This is ridiculous. Okay. You know, my God. Anybody who's ever visited a prison knows this is insane. It's ridiculous. You have power tools to cut through, and you're tunneling through pipes. That's insane. It's like from the movies. No way that's going on. I had a client come to me because his son was shot and killed. Okay? And it turned out his son was shot and killed by a guy that they let walk out of prison. Okay? It was a convicted prisoner. And they let him out for the day. He had a gun that he got from the police locker. Okay, it was from the police evidence locker. He used to kill his son and then went back to that prison later on, a couple of days later. So this kind of stuff is going on galore all over the country, where you can pay to get yourself out of prison and bribe these guards to get out, get cell phones in there, all kinds of nonsense going on. They got this prison down there. They got this whole town shut down, hunting for these 2 escaped convicts. But that prison right now is on lockdown, where they got these prisoners in there. They're not allowed to talk to their family. They're not allowed to leave their cells. They're not allowed to talk to their lawyers. Okay? Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, no one's talking about it. Oh, they're hunting for these prisoners. Oh, they found candy wrappers. What about the guys living in this prison that they want to talk to their lawyers for their appeals that are coming up maybe next week, and they can't talk to their lawyer? That's what's going on. So my guest, her boyfriend's in there right now. He got the crap beat out of him. I saw the pictures. There's a lawsuit. We're going to be talking about that. That's Sunday night, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It'll be on Spreaker. You can find us here. Go up on YouTube, iHeart, all that kind of stuff. And then it'll go into rotation. If it's a 2-hour show, it goes into rotation on all the stuff. Hey, we did a great show, man, by the way. I guess it was like Thursday afternoon. I taped the show for the members section with this woman. Did you hear it?
Let's see. Was it Paul is Dead? Another Paul is Dead? Or
no, it's that British lady.
I don't think, I'm not caught up on the members section.
We just put it up because we got a new guy. By the way, Sean Duff is helping us out, uploading stuff to the members section. He's a really cool guy. He has a band called Strawman, and he's been helping us out. The guy's a really cool guy. I got bad news about Christoph, okay, guys? Christoph is really sick, where he could barely type out a message to get back to me. Christoph has been suffering with migraines, and I think epileptic-type fits he has.
Now, where's Christoph from? Does he live in California?
He did live in California for a while. He was living, I believe, in Virginia when all this took place, and now he's living with his mom. His mom had to come pick him up and take him to his mom's house to feed him and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yes. Listen, there's all kinds of attacks and stuff going on behind the scenes here. You guys have no idea. I don't know how much we can believe that this. How much of this we can believe about Dave McGowan, and we hear Nick Bryant's also too in cancer kind of treatment going on. So my health I don't feel like great myself either these days. I don't know what it is, but me, I'm under attack all over the place, financial attack and stuff like that. But good old Christoph, man, needs our prayers because he's a really cool guy. He's an artist, great guy, great support, and I love him. And he's down right now, suffering. Okay, and so is Dave McGowan. All these guys need our prayers. And Reverend Pinckney, too, needs our prayers as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we did a show with this woman, Christy, who was involved in the UK phone hacking scandal.
Oh, yes, I saw that. I didn't have a chance to get to that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Listen to that. It's great. Okay.
Well, I really like the one on the mind control. It's so real, and your guest laid it out just fantastically. Simply, didn't mince words. It all made sense, and it's evident. It's apparent. You know, this is not out there stuff that he's talking about. It's really pretty obvious, and yeah, I really liked that guest. He was phenomenal.
Neil Sanders, brilliant guy, well studied, great work, you know, and just fascinating guy, but all different kind of topics. And then we have Doug Valentine in there. Did you catch that one?
What was the topic?
Phoenix Project.
Yeah. Yes, I did. I'm sorry, I don't remember the names real well, but I remember the shows. Yes.
Yeah, he's good.
That
too,
was
man.
interesting too. Yeah.
And he's running around telling everybody how much he loved that interview too. So I really feel good about that because I've been trying to get him for a while. Really cool guy. Yeah. But this woman, Christy, from the UK, she's a private investigator over there. She worked for all the tabloids up there and stuff like that. And she was abandoned as a child in an orphanage, and molested in there and abused in there. Then she came out and came back. Her whole story is amazing. Then she winds up living with the real IRA, the IRA revolutionaries. You know. Then she winds up behind the scenes with this big case with the phone hacking and stuff like that. And she's exploring right now if she's been MK Ultra controlled from the start. You know, trauma-based mind control type subject. You know, in her life.
Wow.
Yeah. And she's exploring all this. And if you guys, you know the whole story with us here, she even starts mentioning some names that we know. Okay, so kind of interesting stuff that we have our own questions about. So kind of trying to get their leeches into her. So, yeah. So we got that going on. Yeah. So we got the St. Vincent hunt coming up a couple of weeks, hopefully. And other than that, we need guests. If you have guest suggestions or someone you want to send to us, you know.
Well, maybe try to get Rachel Dolezal.
She
might want to be. She may be making the circuit because her reasoning now is she identifies as black, so she's going to be black. That's her reasoning right now. So, you know, we have other issues going on. We have of course, the Bruce Jenner issue, and people are saying, well, go ahead and identify who you want to be whoever you want. And that's the spin that they're putting on it with her. And, you know, everything else, all the other line with these, you know, pretend hate crimes are just being pushed aside. And I think that's a tragic part of it all. What about that? You know, what about that?
You know, it's interesting. This whole thing with Bruce Jenner. You know, I knew all about Bruce Jenner years ago. I first heard about it during the time of the Tiger Woods case, and I know the whole thing going on back there. You know, this has been known for a long time. A lot of people knew about this, about Bruce Jenner and his problems and what's going on with him. But what I find interesting is that if they were to, you know, if someone were to capture me, right, and, you know, mutilate, you know, castrate me, right? They put me in prison, they castrate me. And then, you know, even pump me up with hormones, you know, and they gave me breasts. Would that make me a woman? You know, if I didn't want it, you know, like the idea is that because he wants it, that turns him into a woman. But what if you don't want it? Can you turn someone into a woman who doesn't want it? You know?
Well, can you turn somebody into a black woman just because she wants to?
Well, can you sew wings on somebody and make them fly? You can't.
Right.
You know, all this stuff is craziness, you know?
And really, like Rachel's own mother said, just imagine all the good she could have done. Because Rachel obviously has a passion for the rights of people. But she has gone so deep into her own fantasy, and it's all kind of crumbling now. And like her mom said, if she could have only just been truthful from the beginning, this would have been a lifetime work. She would have had legacy if she would have just been without all these lies. I mean, she said that her parents beat her with a bullwhip down in South Africa, when they lived down in South Africa, because she was black. Okay, or she made some reference. I'm not sure what it is. Rachel never lived in South Africa.
Really?
These lies are so, I mean, not obvious. The mom is saying, we never beat her, first of all, And second of all, she never even came with us. They were missionaries. And she was here in college. So the fantasy is so deep. She's got a whole nother world in her own mind, you know. And now it looks like we're all going to have to just live in it. It's just been legitimized, and it's sad and it's sick. That's no good for race relations in our country. That's no good. You know, we all need to be banding together against police brutality. You know how I feel about that, Ed. I'm always about the police brutality. But if I see division, right then, red flag. Don't divide us. Bring us together. Especially don't divide us if you're a clown show, if you're some sort of, you know, in pretend land. You know, no, that's not acceptable. We have to have sane, real conversation and real unity so we can fight this police state and this government corruption that is a threat to the very fiber of our of America, the whole being of what we are. And it just gets more and more ridiculous, doesn't it? I mean, give me a break. It's so stupid, this whole thing.
I had a comment tonight. I was talking about, someone commented on YouTube about my show about when I was talking about Al Sharpton. And a guy writes, Opperman running on a treadmill and Sharpton on MSNBC. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, wonder why. And here I am spinning my wheels, trying to, you know, stay above water. And here's this complete charlatan, you know, fraud.
Right.
You know, they give him a TV show, millions of dollars. Doesn't have to pay his taxes. Get out of jail free card, whatever he does. You know, it's just unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. It's a joke. It's a literal joke. They delegitimize everything, you know. The most absurd clowns become the head of a so-called movement when they do more damage than they could ever possibly do for good. And I think it's on purpose. It's just to legitimize the ridiculous. It makes me sick. I'm really, really mad about this thing because, like I said, I live here. I went through that era of the mythos and the reality of the weird satanic white supremacists up in the hills in North Idaho and Eastern Washington. Okay, there was a huge mythos when I grew up around it, but there was some truth to it, of course. And we all, as a community, tried really hard, and we got rid of that, Ed. We chased them all out. There was lawsuits. We took their land. We shouted down their message when they walked down the streets of Coeur d'Alene. And then for it to come in such a ridiculous way again, the only hate crimes that we've heard of around here, Ed, in the last 10 years, are all tied to her.
Oh, really?
Yes. No. Now, we did have some, like we have every once in a while, every 5 years, the random flyers that will show up in different parts of town or in Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene area. You'll hear that. But the only real racial hatred crime or racial injustice stories, they're always her. They always happen to her. And I'm not kidding. It's true. And it was really obvious from the very beginning. Everyone is so afraid of being called a racist, they won't even question. There's no common sense allowed in the discussion. You can't just ask common sense questions without being beaten down. That's not right. We can't have our language taken from us. Then we will never be able to communicate with each other.
Yeah, that is a shame. And even Jerry Seinfeld came out this week, you know, the past couple of weeks, and he said, you know, he doesn't even want to appear on colleges anymore, college campuses, because people are just sitting there looking for something. You call them a homophobe or a racist or, you know, a sexist or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he says, these kids, they can't wait to accuse you of something, you know. And and he says, it's not worth it. And it is true. Even my own kid does it, you know. It's just amazing how the mind control that goes on these days.
I know. I see it, and I reject it. Because I know my own heart. I know my own heart. And so, you know, I think I will have manners. That's the way I approach things. I'm not going to be rude, and I have manners. But I want to be able to discuss this stuff. And I want to be able to discuss it with a clear conscience. Like, I'm not coming at this with a hate or a prejudice for anybody. But we've got to get real, people. You see a white girl up there pretending to be black and sowing these seeds and these lies and dividing our area. No, she can't nobody can be allowed to do that to us. That's where the hatred comes from, is that icky, psycho division policy. And that's what it is these days. You're either in one group or you're in the other. And it's no good. It's not healthy. And nobody's going to take language away from me. That's all there is to it. I'm going to talk about it. Truth is truth, and that's the way it goes. In my opinion.
No, I hear you. You know, and I always say too, you know, when anybody tries to say, "Oh, Ed, you know, you're racist, you're homophobic," you know, if I was, I'd say so. You know, I got no problem. You know, I have no problem sharing my opinions about any topic. You know, so if I was, I'd say so.
Well, I happen to, and as I've gotten older, you know, of course, you get wiser as you get older. And I look back, and I've been foolish. You know, I've been young, especially when I was young. But I have gone to church with black people. I have a love for all people on a church level. Give me a break. You can't call me racist. You can't say it. I'm not racist. I don't think I'm better. I don't teach my kids I'm better than anybody or that they're better than anybody. You know, human beings, and the fact that we're facing real issues that are every single day are happening to the people of our country and our world. There's no room for racism. But on the other token, there's no room for them to be race pimping either. I'm fed up with that. It's mind control. It's making you pick sides every day because they have to slice and dice you to gain control over you. They have to divide us, Ed, so that they can assert power over us. If we're divided, then we can't stand up against them. It's always a shell game. It's look over here, look over there. Don't look at where the real problems are. And it makes me sick. And this clown coming in, it's just so ridiculous. And nobody would even ask her. Nobody even thought to even just ask her parents, you know, because they're so afraid of being called a racist or a sexist or whatever term they wanted to use that day. And it's happened really fast. It's been 10, 15 years where this has all flipped, and it's been a quick flip where you can't even ask basic common sense questions without being labeled.
Yeah, I hear you. You know, it's like thought control, you know, speech control, you know, and political correctness, which is not doing any of us any good.
No.
Well, it's...
now, I do believe in manners. Don't get me wrong. I want to add that. There is manners, and there's rudeness, and there's unnecessary rudeness, and I don't think that should ever be practiced, but you're free to say whatever you want. But there's also, you know, niceness and manners. So,
on that note, I've been on the air for 3.5 hours. I gotta eat some food, take a nap, you know, get back to the real world. But Sunday night, by the way, I keep forgetting. Saturday night, I'm going to be a guest on the Chuck Ocelli, the Ocelli Effect radio show tomorrow night around 6:00, and he's with that podcast, the Boiling Frog podcast. It's kind of well known, and he fills in for Vinny Eastwood and stuff like that all the time. So Chuck Ocelli is going to have me on tomorrow night. I'm going to be doing a couple hours over there. Sunday night, we're going to be doing at least a 1-hour show with my guest.
And that's at 6:00 on Sunday?
Yes, Sunday night, 6:00 Pacific Standard Time. Yeah, and we'll be getting into this whole thing with this prison going on there in Elmira, New York, and about how there's no way these guys can tunnel out of that place, you know, and how the place is on total lockdown, and they're going door to door searching people's houses, by the way, too. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on with that we have to talk about. Next week, I don't have a guest next week, but it might be St. Vincent Hunt, the son of E. Howard Hunt. Claims his dad confessed to the JFK assassination. E. Howard Hunt was a Watergate burglar, all that kind of stuff. Should be a good interview. I got another Paul is Dead show coming up, and other stuff too. A whole bunch of West Memphis 3 shows we're going to be doing in the member section that I'm working on as well. So, Jessica, thank you so much. I think Jessica hung up on me. You didn't even say goodbye. Didn't hurt my feelings. Don't worry, Jessica. You don't hurt my feelings. So, good night, guys. I love you all. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you during the week, and I'll see you next week. Good night. Is my mic working? It's not. Something else happened. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Good night.